All right, ladies and gentlemen. So Pally Time 2 and 5 back here again, and it's kind of late at night, so you're going to hear a lot of noise outside. That seems like a speedster or some shit. I live in a big city in China currently. Um, was originally from Alaska. The wife is Hong Kong, and her career took off in mainland China, so I ended up kind of tagging along. So yeah, living in Guangzhou, China currently. In an apartment, but so you can hear the cars and stuff downstairs. But I got a request for somebody going into more in-depth detail on my current Holy Reckoning talent tree. Um, Spell power paladin, though, however, you can do it with a deep ret. You can do it with a ret reckoning. You can do it with a deep holy. You can do it with all kinds of different paladin specs. The one-handed holy style of play, go away. The one-handed holy style of play is, my bad. The one-handed spell power style of play is all in the gear. It's not really about your talents, but I'll go over what I am currently and why. Yeah, I also live in the jungle. That's why you always hear me drinking freaking water. From Alaska to the jungle. All right, so let's just put her together real fast here. Do 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 do. Do 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 1 2 and then 1 2 3 4 5 1 2. Boo. Typically I'm rolling with like 1 point in Righteous Fury for like tanking purposes, but you can easily just put it into toughness. Okay, so the reason why you're putting a point into toughness as opposed to anticipation is you actually like to be crit, and as opposed to concentrated avoidance on your paladin, you, as cargoes would say, you want just a flat raw amount of consecration. I mean, of damage avoidance. Toughness 5 out of 5 is actually really good on a paladin. Like people tell you, oh, mathematically it's terrible. No, 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 no. It's really good for the same reasons I talk about in the. Oh God, what is it? Let me move this away because I breathe too much sometimes. It's really good for the same reasons that the whole hit point thing was good. Um, in the sense that you went from like 4,800 hit points to like 5,000 hit points, and suddenly you're taking extra spell cast to kill. Toughness is kind of doing that. Like it mathematically, it might be shit, but it's causing you to live longer, which means you're healing more, which is causing you to live longer, which means you're healing more, and it's just like Jesus. It's actually really good, especially against rogues, but we'll get to that in a second. 3 out of 3. Oh, what's going on here? Okay, a little bit of lag. 1 and should end out with 5. All right, so this is my current build. 24, 27, 0. And, 1 sec, water. Okay, so the key features of this build is I'm prioritizing intellect over divine strength. That's just because you're not really getting much out of divine strength, so you might as well prioritize intellect over it. If you were doing different builds, that would definitely change. I do have 2 out of 2 in Unyielding Faith. I have no points in Improved Seal of Righteousness. Improved Seal of Righteousness, you can look into it, but basically it's complete crap. It like increases the base amount of damage of your Seal of Righteousness, which if you're using rank 3 is absolutely nothing. But it does not increase the total amount by 15% at all, so fuck that. Spiritual focus, naturally. Consecration. Dracova's not a big fan of consecration, but in certain build types, there are extremely good situations for consecration. I don't think he knocks it in the Holy Reckoning style, but he's not a fan of using it. Specifically, there are very specific circumstances where you want to throw down consecration. What comes to mind would be in the rogue matchup, you want to throw down the consecration. To a lesser degree in the warrior matchup, but that's against like lesser skilled warriors. Against shamans, it's not half bad. Against warlocks in particular, it's absolutely amazing. The reason consecration's got a lot of boons now because we're using frost oil with a really fast one-handed speed weapon, which means consecration's kind of your boy. Yeah, she's not half bad, but she is super mana intensive, so you got to be very careful about that. The biggest thing in the holy tree that I got is 2 out of 2 lasting motherfucking judgment. This lets my seals last my light and my wisdom only last 30 seconds on their target. It is such a long duration that I almost never need to reapply the judgment. And this often takes many classes off guard because they're like, oh, rather than wasting the mana to cleanse it, I'm just going to get away from this paladin for a little while and let it fall off. And then it doesn't fall off. And they're like, oh, what's going on? Oh, shit. But this Lasting Judgment, let me think. Where specifically is Lasting Judgment good? Dealing with shamans, it's extremely good. It's also extremely good dealing with warriors, believe it or not, because the warriors like to try to kite you. Even the MS warriors, this is not half bad. Especially since you can't really, if they're doing the kiting thing and you can't really get the slows on them too well, judging Crusader on them is nowhere near as good as either judging damage into them or putting up a judgment of light on them. And you'll be surprised with the judgment of light's 2/3 chance to proc per weapon swing, just how freaking fast or much life you'll pull back from your target, irregardless of whether or not they have Mortal Strike on you. Other places, it's fantastic. Fantastic against druids. Fantastic against shadow priests. The wisdom stuff. It has a lesser extent on warlocks. I was a big fan of using this on warlocks in the past, but you got to go Judgment of the Crusader now against a warlock because I don't think your DPS is sufficient to kill them within the amount of time on target that you're generating against a warlock. I will say, though, that the general rule of Judgment of Wisdom and Judgment of Light, especially in duels, is if you have the DPS to kill them within the amount of time on target that you've generated for yourself, go with a Judgment of Light or a Judgment of Wisdom, particularly a Judgment of Light. And the reason for that is it's just the stupidest thing in the world to watch you heal. So to heal so much and regenerate so much mana when your opponent can't do anything to you and they slowly just die horribly. But if you don't have sufficient damage, go with Crusader, to be sure. But it's here because there are certain situations where Lasting Judgment is your boy. It's also extremely good against rogues. I haven't been disappointed with it first rogues either. Well, there's better talents over here for rogues. So as you can see, there's nothing interesting going on here in the talent tree so far until you get into why the hell do I have 3 out of 3 improved concentration aura. I have Blessing of Sanctuary because since Blessing of Kings is no longer increasing all of your stats. Am I still here? Cool. Since Blessing of Kings is no longer increasing all of your stats is wrong. So on private servers, you should all know this by now. If you threw up kings on yourself, you'd literally gain 10% more hit points, 10% more mana. You do it on actual classic servers, it's like you just get it from the stats you got from your gear and maybe like on your gearing page. If you strip off all your gear and you notice you have like 2,000 hit points and you look at your stamina is like 100, you're like, well, actually I got like 2,500 hit points. You're like, where do those extra 1,500 hit points come from? And the answer is Blizzard just gave them to you, and Kings does not affect that. And it's the same with your mana bar. So Blessing of Sanctuary has been proving itself to be vastly superior when fighting enemy melee targets than Kings currently. I could be wrong about that. You can try to do the math, but even against like MS Warriors, Sanctuary is kind of better than Blessing of Kings, but you can do the math on it yourself. Whichever one's better, just use it. The whole reason why I have improved concentration aura 3 out of 3 is specifically for dueling or fighting shamans and for fighting rogues. It doesn't really do anything else in any of the other matchups. So if you read it, it says, increase the effect of your concentration aura by an additional 15%. So it gives you like a 50% pushback immunity. Gives all group members affected by the aura an additional 15% chance to resist silent and interrupt effects. It's the resistance of silence and interrupt effects. In theory, the silence can be used against like a shadow priest, blah blah blah. But just the shadow priest silence is also shadow. So why the hell switch out a shadow resist aura into this in some kind of psychic anticipation of their silence to go for a 15% over just sticking it in the other one? But rogues try to interrupt your healing. Shamans try to interrupt your healing. So, like I say in my versus rogue video, you want to be spending a good bit of your time when you're not stunned and getting punched in the dick by a rogue, just casting little flash of lights. And the reason for this is because you lose no DPS if they succeed in kicking you. Your auto attack just goes through. So you like make an auto attack and you'll immediately start up a flash of light. And since your auto attack cycle is 1.5 seconds and your melee flash of light is 1.5 seconds, you don't really lose. If they kick you, you lose no DPS on target. Thank you, Mr. Horn Guy. So you lose no DPS on target. It also costs some energy, which means that they're doing less damage to you because they had to spend the healing kicking you. My bad. They had to spend the energy kicking you. So if they kick you, it's you lose no DPS, and you basically healed because now they're down energy, which is their primary damage source when they're dueling you. When I'm dueling rogues, I'm actually a huge fan now of Blessing of Sanctuary, because Blessing of Sanctuary, how do I put this? If you actually calculate the percentage of damage that a rogue is doing to you during the course of a fight, it wouldn't surprise me if over 50% of it is coming from their melee attacks. Like, I'm talking like just their basic auto attacks practically. And so Blessing of Sanctuary, it cuts down on that by like a massive amount. It cuts down on that by upwards of like a third. And it's just terrifying how much hit points you generate from Blessing of Sanctuary over the course of that fight. So, go against a rogue. You throw yourself into improved concentration, or you start going for these flashes of light. One of two things happens. One of two? Yeah, usually one of two. One of two things happen other than the rogue sucking and not trying to kick you. Either he succeeds in kicking you, which is nothing but positive net gain for you, or with the ascribed negative that I'm sure if Drakova was here, he would point out, is that sometimes you don't want to be in you cannot use your holy tree for the next 6 seconds. So, is it 6 seconds? Whatever. For however long you can't use it. So just be consciously aware of this. The other thing that tends to happen is that the rogue misses, like they fail to hit you for some reason, or improved concentration aura comes in clutch, and you take the kick, but you failed to interrupt. Like the 15% chance of failure comes in, and you get the flash of light off, which is like a nightmare scenario for a rogue because they've used up the energy, and they've also failed to stop the heal. You do lose DPS, but if you've ever dueled a rogue and you're like, hey, would you mind losing 1.5 seconds of DPS in order to flash of light yourself? You would be like, yes, please. Anyways, the other matchup that it comes in particularly clutch, and the reason why I have 3 out of 3 here, is shamans. So the shamans are always really, really trying to kill you with their Earth Shock. And I'm talking like Earth Shock interrupt into Grenade interrupt into Earth Shock interrupt into Goblin, what the heck? Goblin Mortar interrupt into Earth Shock interrupt, and you're just like, Jesus fucking Christ. I guess the fire ones are not technically interrupts that this would work on, but you get basically where I'm going with this. So if you suspect an Earth Shock, you're in improved concentration, or if you're expecting a fire interrupt, you're in fire resist, and then improved in concentration, then fire resist, then improved concentration. So you're doing a little bit of swapping, and you're making the shaman jump through these damn hoops. And I don't think I have the gear here, but it's going to get worse for them come phase 5. So come phase 5, I use Obsidian Shield. And you're making the shaman jump through you're making him take a resist check. Well, first off, you're making him take a miss check. Then you're making him take a resist check. And then even if they pass both the resist and the miss chance check, there's a 15% chance that you take that earth shock in the face, but it didn't stop your healing, so you just heal right the way through it. And then come phase 5, we'll throw on an Obsidian Shield, and that's like a 5% chance every time you get hit with a spell to silence the target for 3 seconds. And what that'll do, that's just another annoyance that's a free holy light, basically. So if it happens on the earth shock, then it didn't really help you at all, because you're stuck not being able to heal, they're stuck silence, and theoretically it helps you because that's a lightning bolt you're not taking in that amount of time, right? So it's very, very useful. But more accurately, it's like they blast you with a lightning bolt. They want to interrupt you with the earth shock, but they got the 5-second silence, and then you're just healing yourself and you're laughing your butt off. But this has come in so clutch against the shaman matchup. It's the elemental shaman matchup in particular. It's a little hard to describe because elemental shamans are extraordinarily bursty, but they're extraordinarily mana inefficient. So you're stuck there as the paladin, and you're just trying to heal through this RNG, this RNG lightning death ball that keeps getting chucked into you, and you're kind of losing that fight either pretty convincingly or pretty steadily. Depending upon the RNG of the shaman and the lightning bolts and stuff that are coming in. And you could be about to lose the duel and about to die despite all your best efforts to heal yourself, and then all of a sudden a resist comes in for you, an improved concentration or a 15% comes in for you, and all of a sudden the dynamics of that duel shift completely, because whereas he was going all in on the kill on you and he was getting his RNG going, all of a sudden you're back to full life and he's back at square one, except this time he's at like 50% or a third mana, and you're still sitting at like 2/3 mana, and it's fucking go time. Basically, because it's like they've used their grenade, they've used their goblin mortar, improved concentration aura comes in clutch, saves you, boom, you go back to life. And what's the key feature I always say when it's go time with my style of paladin build? It is heal to full, and then it's go time, right? So in this case, it's like I got out all your stuns, my improved concentration auras come in clutch. Now it's freaking go time. Maybe I'm doing a skeleton summon on you to keep you in combat, and then I'm just running at you or something like that. But I'll make a versus shaman video after I make a managing RNG video. But other than that, there's really nothing going on here that's all that fascinating about my particular paladin build. Other than I like improved concentration aura against shamans and rogues. That's why I have 3 out of 3. I've got 2 out of 3 lasting judgment, because I particularly like lasting judgment versus certain classes, which I talked about earlier. And the last thing that is absolutely fucking ridiculously amazing about this spec is you are a ridiculously raid viable spec. Like, this is a raid viable spec. And what's fascinating these days is theoretically you'll do better if you have Holy Shock, and theoretically you'll do better if you have Holy Power. Like, if you don't have Reckoning and instead you have Holy Power. Since people can't really check your skills, they can't check your talent tree to my knowledge in-game. It's almost impossible for them to tell whether or not you're the deep holy paladin with the 5 out of 5 holy power, who picked up Sanctuary instead of Holy Shock, to be a total complete and total pimp, or if you don't have these 5 points here and instead you went with Reckoning, which I would highly suggest you do. And if they ever find out, you just explain it's a quality of life thing, get off my back, it's not that big of a deal. Being one of the few paladins that actually has lasting judgment capabilities in raids is actually really sexy. The fact that you also have improved Blessing of Sanctuary is really sexy. So a lot of people are actually coming around to Blessing of Sanctuary, predominantly because... another thing about... Another thing about lasting... I guess I can't talk about... I could be wrong, but a thing about lasting judgments I've kind of noticed in raids is some people complain that it takes up like a debuff slot. But from what I've seen, it kind of pushes off. It's got a super high priority when you put it on the target, because raid buffs work on like a priority system with what stays on and what falls off. It's got a super high priority, and from my experience, it's... The number one thing it seems to be pushing off, at least in my raids, is it's pushing off like deep wounds, which nobody gives a shit if you're pushing off deep wounds for like for all your melee to have a 2/3 chance on hit to heal themselves for 61 hit points, or for everybody to be regenerating mana. Like, you save so much gold, it makes your raids so happy, and it lets you easily deal with certain fights. It's just amazing. Lasting Judgment is fucking awesome. But people are coming around to Blessing of Sanctuary because apparently, and I heard this recently, that you can stack 2 Blessing of Sanctuaries at the same time if you got more than one Paladin rolling with it, which is kind of rare. I usually don't have enough Paladins in raid in general, but especially not to do this. But the idea here is that you have one Paladin do the Greater Blessing of Sanctuary, you have another Paladin do the 5-minute Blessing of Sanctuary, and apparently they stack for, like, you take 48 less points of damage per damage source. And that doesn't sound like a lot until you get into certain fights like Valistraz, is Alexstrasza or whatever. And then other like Fire Maw, for example, where it's like constant AoE ticks of damage that are really annoying. And you start pairing things like double Blessing of Sanctuary with a Judgment of Light on the target, and the next thing you know, everyone's like, oh, this is really easy. Judgment of Light's also proving really good in to be judging on certain bosses. I found it really good in like ZG and other areas where all the melee is going to kind of get punched in the dick periodically, and the healer's primary task is just healing the melee. Like, the melee keep getting little AoE damage, like Baron Geddon, for example. You throw Judgment of Light on the target, and they're some happy melee, I'll tell you that, because they're just attacking so fast that they're healing so fast. But from a pure PvP perspective, yeah, the only things going on interesting here about my build are it's a raid viable, lasting judgment, Blessing of Sanctuary, reckoning-oriented paladin that has improved concentration aura. There is a spec I want to try that I've told some people about. Jakova thinks it's not going to work. I would definitely listen to him on the subject, but Lord knows I'm going to try it. And that is to basically, I'll just put it up real quick, or something like it. And do I do that? I don't think so. Do I? I can't remember. 5 out of 5, 4 out of 4. Whatever. So basically, you just put points in, however you wish, into the retribution tree until you get down to eye for an eye. Then you proceed to go back to reckoning. Pretty much reckoning however it best suits you. I think I go with 2-3 points here because I'm still down with that. But you could easily swap over to this other one, and then we're over here into the Holy Tree. So this is clearly a reckoning build. But my theory behind this build is, when I get my T2, I'm going to test her out. And this point here and over to here are interchangeable, from improved concentration aura to improved Hammer of Justice. I'm missing Blessing of Sanctuary. That kind of hurts my soul. You can also pull a point out from... actually, you can't pull a point out anywhere. Could you pull it? No, you wouldn't want to do that. Okay, so I guess my soul just hurts. But you have eye for an eye, which is kind of a big deal. You have the ability to heal in combat, because you got 56% pushback immunity over here, and if you're in concentration aura, you've got 106 pushback immunity. If you strip a point out from here, you still have over 100%. So the idea is if and when you're healing yourself, you're in improved concentration aura, which has some serious negatives. Your healing is rather substantially reduced because you're missing like healing light, you're missing concentration, you're missing a lot of stuff to pick up eye for an eye. You're also missing the amazing tempo of Divine Favor, the free heal from Divine Favor, and the tempo of the critical healing from it. But my idea here is, what if I sacrifice in the healing spectrum of my playstyle, and just kind of rely on the gear itself to heal me, like to keep me up and keep me in the fight, and instead pick up eye for an eye? Like, what would that be like? Especially against like mages, for example, or against those shamans. But this was a spec I was down to looking into. There we go. Back before I realized that SOR causes ×2 pushback against spellcasters. And before I realized that Flurry Axe was going to be our main-handed weapon that we were going with. So now I'm thinking that this build is probably less viable than the one I showed previously. Like, this one's definitely going to be better against mages, for sure. But against a bunch of other matchups, it's probably substantially worse. Especially since I wanted this build for, like, okay, mages and shamans. This is what I'm taking this build primarily for. But I don't worry about shamans anymore because the Flurry Axe is so fast, and it's going to cause so much pushback, and I'm going to be slowing the shit out of them so much that I don't think I care. Like, I really don't think I need eye for an eye anymore. I think I'm just going to heal through their shit, and I'm going to go over there, and I'm going to start hitting on them, and they're just going to and die. I think that's going to be the story of Shaman versus me duel. So I'll go test it. The major downside to this, of course, is this is a pure PvP build. This is not raid viable at all. So currently, I've just been completely and totally chilling with Holy Reckoning. So anyways, just so we're clear, that was a 24 Holy and a 27 in the protection tree. Don't tell anybody in your guild that you actually have Reckoning. Like, don't do it. If they bitch, they're stupid, and you probably need to find another guild. But other than that, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if you have any more questions. And I'll make sure to keep making videos.